Welcome to our house for another Amazing Stories Unwrapped. After 22 days straight on the road, it's great to be back home in beautiful Naples, Florida. We have been to some of the most beautiful, iconic cities in Europe: Dresden, Prague, Strasbourg, Vienna, and Budapest. But as Dorothy said in The Wizard of Oz, there's no place like home. And we're glad to be back with our Facebook Live family. As we so often say, we have no other aim than to encourage and inspire you. There's enough bad news in the world today. We want to bring some good news your way, a story that will lift you up, give you something worth chewing on, put some hope in your heart, a spring in your step, some steel in your spine to overcome every adversity with triumph. Today, I want to talk about the polarization that has infected our social media age. It's so pervasive, so disheartening. Sometimes it seems like we're on the verge of another civil war. We're so quick to turn on those who disagree with us, to turn them into our enemies. It seems harder than ever to have a reasoned and calm discussion of differences of opinion without folks coming unhinged emotionally. We're so prone to dismiss those who disagree with us, to label others, to smear them as whacked-out liberals or right-wing nut jobs, ad infinitum, ad nauseum. Well, here's a story I've written, a true story that will appear in my soon-to-be-released book, 365 Amazing Stories. I call it the Four Chaplains. In an era of increasing polarization, it might do us all some good to remember an amazing act of heroism that took place several decades ago. It took place in a time of nation against nation, race against race, religion against religion. It was an era that began with ethnic cleansing and ended with a Holocaust of unimaginable horror. On February 3rd, 1943, an Army transport ship, the Dorchester, was ferrying 900 combat troops across the Atlantic to join the fight against Nazi Germany. It was not an easy passage. The winter crossing was stormy, making those aboard feel like they were riding a rodeo bull. Young boys in uniform were both homesick and seasick in hot, airtight compartments below deck. But their queasy claustrophobia would soon be forgotten when torpedoes from a German submarine slammed into the Dorchester. The captain knew that his vessel was going down, so he sounded the orders to abandon ship with all haste. The pandemonium was heightened by the utter blackness of the stormy night. Frightened young men were desperately searching for life jackets and trying to find lifeboats on a ship sinking rapidly in icy seas 150 miles off the shore of Greenland. In the midst of this chaos, 4 military chaplains became immortal heroes. Father John Washington, a New Jersey Roman Catholic priest. The Reverend Clark Poland, a Reformed Church of America chaplain from Ohio. The Reverend George Fox, a Pennsylvania Methodist. And finally, Rabbi Alexander Good, a Jewish leader from Brooklyn. Together, they did what chaplains were supposed to do as they guided soldiers to evacuation points, as they whispered courage in their ears, helped them to lifeboats and over the side of the sinking ship. When life jackets ran out, the 4 chaplains peeled theirs off and gave them away. Nearly 700 men died in the frigid waters that night, but more than 400 survived, some wearing the life jackets handed to them by those 4 chaplains. One soldier said that he was going back to retrieve his gloves, but Rabbi Good insisted that the young man take his. Witnesses remember seeing those chaplains for the last time, linking arms together and praying as the ship disappeared from sight. A Catholic priest, a Reformed pastor, a Methodist preacher, and a Jewish rabbi. They may have come from diverse regions of America. They probably voted for different political candidates, believed disparate theological views, and worshiped with dissimilar liturgies. But they believed in the same God. They fought under the same flag. And were all willing to die for young soldiers whose views and lifestyles they might not have personally embraced. It's no wonder that these chaplains were posthumously awarded one of the highest honors this nation can give to its military heroes. In an age of intolerance, when almost everyone who does not agree with us is dismissed as an enemy to be ridiculed, we would do well periodically to dust off the amazing story of four chaplains who linked arms together in unity to pay the ultimate sacrifice for others. If it causes any of us to become less divisive, the retelling of it will be more than worth it. We might even benefit from something Malcolm Forbes once said: diversity is the art of thinking independently together. Diversity, the art of thinking independently together. We don't have to think alike to walk together. But certainly we're wrong to separate from family and friends who vote differently than we do. We're wrong to judge them as stupid or un-American, or to call them terrible names, or to give them terrible labels. We can be bigger than that. Maybe just maybe we should remember the words of the Old Testament Jewish Messiah, or the Jewish prophet Malachi. Are we not all children of the same God? Are we not all created by the same God? So I want to challenge you today to become more creative. Don't take the easy route. Don't take the low road, the road where you dismiss people because they think differently than you do, or you label them because they're not like you. Don't take the low road, the easy road of following the crowd, of getting along with people that are just like you. Maybe sometimes you need to get out of your echo chamber. Maybe you need to listen to the other side more often. Ask questions of people who think differently than you do. Ask them why they think differently than you do. Maybe even sometimes challenge them in a godly and a compassionate, positive way to think about the implications, the conclusions of the way they think. We need to sit down more often together. There used to be a time when old men in small towns in mid-America would go to the general store, sit down at the Cracker Barrel or the Pickle Barrel, and discuss differences in politics, differences in sociological issues and what's going on in their community and life. And they might have differing opinions. They might even get heated in their arguments. But when they got up from that pickle barrel, that Cracker Barrel, they looked at each other and knew that they were both good Americans, patriotic Americans, who just had a different solution, a different view on how America could be better, maybe even great again. Well, I'm glad you joined me today. If you have to jump off right now, it was good to be with you. I hope that if you get a chance, you'll want to sign on either to Amazon.com or come to our website and order this new book, which will be coming out October the 8th, the 365 book, Amazing Stories book. It's got so many great stories, including the story I told you today. If you can stay with us for Amazing Stories Unwrapped Overtime, then Joyce and I would like to give a shout out, would like to hear your comments, respond to your questions. Joyce, it's good to be back home.
It is. Hi, everybody. How are you?
After living out of suitcases for 21 straight days, we came home last night, got to climb into the old bed and just relax in familiar surroundings.
It was great.
We had a great trip, though, didn't we?
Except it's hotter here than it was in Europe. I enjoyed that respite.
But we sure had a great
we did.
50th anniversary celebration, the kind of celebration that just kept on keeping on.
Yes.
And I was so excited on Saturday to go to that great musical, Hamilton. One of the great musical experiences of our life. If you can ever see Hamilton, it's a great way to really understand a very important part of our history, done in a way that's very contemporary. If you can take your children, grandchildren to see that, They will love it. You'll be glad you did. It's part of our continuing effort to have people share their legacy with the next generation of people. Well, Joyce, who's on with us today?
Well, today we've got several people. We've got Brittany Pearson.
Hi, Brittany.
Brian Hunter. Hey, Brian.
Hey, Brian. Brian's a long ways away from us, but we're glad he's joining us today.
Chris McDonald.
Hi, Chris. Good to have you with us, buddy.
We've got Renee.
Renee, glad to have you with us. We've been praying for Renee. Renee had a wonderful homegoing celebration for her father last yesterday actually. So Renee, our prayers and love still are with you.
Charlene Martinez. Hi, Charlene.
Hi, Charlene. Good to have you with us. Charlene's beautiful daughter filmed some film with us yesterday. A very special film that we're bringing. She's the most beautiful little girl in the world. Well, other than our two grandchildren, that is.
J. Paul.
Hi, J. Paul, all the way from Hyderabad, India, with his wife. We're glad to have you with us.
Jim Michalski.
Hi, Jim. Good to have you with us.
And we've got two watch parties. Good Morning, Lord, and they've been with us before.
Hi, Good Morning, Lord.
And The Tiny Stories.
The Tiny Stories. I love that name.
Right.
My book's the Book of Amazing Stories. Each one's about a page and a half. And so Tiny Stories, power-packed, are sometimes the best stories.
And we've got Claudia from Dresden.
Hi, Claudia.
She's in Dresden.
We were just with Claudia in Dresden and her wonderful husband, Richard, touring that gorgeous, beautiful city. Good to have you with us all the way from Germany.
And of course, Ellen Raymond.
Hi, Ellen. Ellen's a long ways away, but actually she's just in the next room. Ellen does a lot of the writing for our organization, the branding for our organization, The Power of Story, and she makes me look better than I really am. So, Ellen, good to have you with us today.
And we've got John Hilborn.
Hi, John.
From Tulsa.
Old friend from Tulsa.
And Dan Mercaldo from New York.
Hi, Dan. Look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
I've got a couple of questions here. One is, the Bible says, how can two walk together if they don't agree? Does that contradict what you've been telling us about finding unity with those who disagree with us?
Well, we can't have unity with everyone. In fact, the Bible has an interesting statement. It said there must be disagreements among us. How else would we know what the truth is? Or how else would we know that we have differences? So there will be differences. We have different viewpoints. One of the problems in our age today is that for the first time in history, we have 5 generations of people, each with a different lifestyle, a different viewpoint, a different way of looking at life, and we all occupy the same space. And so when you have baby boomers and millennials and Gen Z and Gen X and a few remaining silent generation people, we all came from different viewpoints. We've all had different experiences in our lives, so we're going to look at things differently. And so, yes, in some ways, we can't walk together. In some ways, if you're involved in the same political party and you're trying to get a candidate elected, obviously, you're not going to be able to walk down the road with somebody from a different political party. But that doesn't mean that when you get together for dinner, when you get together for a family reunion, when you talk to your neighbor across the fence, or when you talk to somebody at church who thinks differently than you are, that you can't have a good conversation, that you can't learn from each other. I understand that when you're in a project which is very narrowly defined and you're trying to accomplish a particular goal, no, you can't walk together. You can't work together. But there are a lot of other areas where you can be friends and be kind to each other and learn from each other and grow together.
Brian Hunter has a question. What are some signs that I should look for when I'm failing to listen during a conversation? How would you stop and make the correction? What if I know I'm right?
Well, Brian always has a difficult question. And it's a question for me because you probably aren't going to be surprised about this. I'm not the world's best listener. I talk too much. I have so many things I want to share with people, so many points I want to make. I saw a T-shirt in New York, in Washington, D.C. last week that kind of reminded me of me. The T-shirt said, "I'm not being argumentative. I'm just working overtime to share my opinion with you." And I'm a little bit like that. And I think sometimes we have to just kind of be aware of how much we're talking. Sometimes we just have to stop and look at somebody and say, are you hearing me? Are you tracking with me? Am I making sense to you? Or stop and say, what do you think about what I just said? Or maybe you have another opinion about what I just said. So I think we have to always be aware, and I particularly have to be aware that most people have a very small capacity to get a lot of information thrown at them at one time. So we need to learn to self-edit. One final comment. When I was in Hollywood, they used to say, film directors used to tell me that a great film is not the film that's on the screen, but a great film is how much film is left on the cutting room floor. In other words, how well we edit. Most of us need to learn to become better self-editors.
Thank you, Bob. I have a comment to read here from Brittany. She says, I was told recently that I'm to blame for the evil and woes of the world and should just be dead to save the world from my evil. All because I have different beliefs. There's a serious lack of common ground and civility.
There really is. And Brittany, I'm sorry, first of all, you had to hear that from someone. There are a lot of angry people today. You know, our country was moving in a particular direction. And with the last election, the country took somewhat of a U-turn. Some would say a right turn. And so there's a lot of anger right now of people who are worried that the things that they had fought for, the things that they believed in, are going to be taken off the table. And those of us who perhaps were on another side of the issue in years past have been frustrated and angry as we've seen so many of the values we held to, so many of the beliefs we thought were an integral part of our country, of our church, of family culture, of values. We got angry too. And we have to remember our frustration and allow other people to be frustrated. And the truth is, Brittany, some people, well, how can I say it? They're just not nice people. They're just not mature in the way they handle things. And so when people say things to you, rather than taking it personally, you just need to smile and say, thank you very much, and walk away and whisper a prayer for that person, and frankly, feel sorry for that person that they can't control themselves, that they can't be kind to other people who think differently.
Thanks, Bob. Ellen asks, how do I approach a dear friend whose political views are the opposite of mine?
I'm guessing, Ellen, the reason you asked the question is you're saying they're different. I have some views I think would be helpful for my friend to hear. I think I would just give you some principles to think about. Number one principle for all of us is, what hill are we willing to die on? I mean, there are some points you could make, but the price you pay for that, making that point, really isn't worth the point that you make. The second thing you have to ask is, are they willing to listen? Do they care about what I think? Jesus made a comment. He said, don't cast your pearls before swine. Jesus said, don't give that which is precious. And those things that you hold to as values, they're very precious. Don't throw the precious things to the wild dogs, or they'll turn on you. They'll tear those things up, and then they'll tear you up. And so beware of whether or not even the person wants to listen to you. The other thing you have to ask yourself the question is, do I want to win the person, or do I want to win the point? My daughter and I have some very different political viewpoints. And she got very frustrated with me during the last election. And I had to make a decision. Is it really important whether I prove a point to my daughter? No, it's not, because she's such a wonderful person and such a joy in my life that I want to keep her. I want to keep our friendship alive. I would suggest to some of us that we ought to be careful at family reunions, at the dinner table, at Thanksgiving, at Christmas. When I was growing up, they used to have a saying that you don't want to talk about race, religion, or politics with friends. It's a good way to lose friends. And though that may seem a bit passé, there's still some truth to what another generation used to say to us.
Okay, thank you, Bob. I'd like to acknowledge a couple of people. Cindy Fernandez from the Watch Party group.
Hi, Cindy.
And she told, Renee told her that you were a pastor, and she said, "Praise the Lord, Pastor."
Thank you. I'm no longer a pastor in a church. I now have, I think, a wider congregation, including people who watch us on Facebook Live from India to South Africa to Brazil to Germany. And so I guess I'll always be a pastor. I hope I'm a good pastor to my wife. I hope I'm a good pastor to my children, my grandchildren, to all of my friends. And in fact, I think all of us can be pastors. What's a pastor? Just a shepherd who helps guide other people to the Father's house. We can all do that.
Brittany also has another, we had a couple more people join us. I'm seeing hellos to some people that I don't necessarily see their names, but Renee said hi to Linda, and Chris McDonald said hi to a friend. Also,
well, I'll join you in those highs.
Yes, Kathy Verteber and Donna Barano are with us.
Hi, Kathy and Donna. Donna was with us for a long time in Europe.
And another woman I'd like to acknowledge is Mary, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, Machanda. She's also a pastor, and Renee thinks she's from Africa.
I'm Mary from Africa. I love the continent of Africa. I've been there so many times, and God is doing a great work as His Spirit's moving across Africa.
I just have one more. Brittany has one more comment, and I think that'll be the last. I don't see any more questions.
Okay.
To be a conservative and a Christian is nearly a crime. I have thick skin and can take it, but it's sad. They're missing the point of life. They lack love and compassion, glass half empty sorts. They'll not change me. I know my Heavenly Father loves me and appreciates my willingness to press on. And she said, my grandpa would call you a disciple.
Oh, well, thank you, Brittany. And, you know, it is difficult. And it kind of depends on which echo chamber you're in. I mean, we're up in Washington, D.C. It's a very different political climate from down here in Naples, Florida. We're in New York. It's very different than it is in Oklahoma. If you're in Seattle, it's very different than it might be in Peoria, Illinois. And so we all come from different areas, and wherever we are, whatever we believe, sometimes it's hard. But I want to give this challenge to you. Don't give up your beliefs. Don't hold back when you have a chance to share with somebody that which be helpful for them. But be wise. And don't judge people. Don't call people names. That's the low road. Take the high road. And together, I believe that all of our best days are ahead of us. I'll see you Thursday for another amazing story.
Thanks
Unwrapped.
for joining us.